the British Podcast Awards, stats from the 2017 Podcast Consumer Report, and the launch of Upload Radio.
Welcome to the Richard Daly Podcast, bringing you a UK perspective on the latest news and developments from the world of podcasting and internet radio.
Welcome to episode 29. I'm your host, Richard Daly. Each week I curate and discuss the latest news in podcasting and internet radio, with a focus on the smaller podcaster, radio host and DJ. Last Saturday saw the inaugural British Podcast Awards, so I bought my £26 ticket and went along. Now first off, I guess I should address the elephant in the room here. At the start of the awards ceremony, one of the organisers said, "These awards are the very first of its kind in Britain." As I mentioned on this podcast when the awards were first announced, these can't really be called the first ever British Podcast Awards. The first UK Podcasters Awards were launched by Mike and Isabella Russell in 2015, and these were also held in 2016. I also understand they're going to be held again this year. Podcasting has, of course, been around in the UK since the term was first coined in around 2014 by The Guardian. Now, I'm certainly not looking to get into the politics of the history of podcasting in the UK, and there is plenty of that, believe me, but I do think there should be some recognition of the existing awards. Now, of course, these two award ceremonies do seem aimed at different markets. The UK podcasters are focused on the independent podcaster, while the British Podcast Awards are, this year at least, dominated by bigger media organisations. Now, as I said, I attended the awards, and I have to say the event left me pretty underwhelmed and maybe just a little bit angry. My £26 got me a couple of free glasses of wine and a bit of finger food, but no seat for the awards themselves. 2/3 of the space was reserved for sponsors' seating, and the rest of us had to stand at the back. Host Ollie Mann started his introduction by slagging off BBC reporting of podcasting, which seemed a little strange given a lot of BBC people were there in the audience. He then announced a number of rules, including that winners would not be allowed to give speeches, and that they would have to pose for a photo and go backstage to talk to the official media podcast. Okay, not particularly strange rules, but still odd to announce them on stage, I thought. Anyway, Ollie fairly quickly asked a winner a question and then allowed him to make a short speech. So much for the rules. I won't go through the winners on this podcast. I will put a link to the results in the show notes, though, if you're interested. To be 100% honest, I think I'd only heard of 2 of the entire list of nominated podcasts, and I listen to at least 15 hours of podcasts every week. All but a couple of the winners were from media organisations, and quotes from the judges praising winners included things like highly produced and best use of sound design. To top things off, Ollie made fun of the fact that over 100,000 listeners had voted for the Listener's Choice Award, and virtually all of the nominated podcasts in that category were independent podcasts. I do think these awards have their place, but judging by those I spoke to in the audience on the night, it is always going to be focused on the established media organisations. I think we will see the UK Podcasters Awards making more of their focus on independence, and hopefully the 2 awards can then run happily in parallel. Have you missed your regular dose of podcast stats? Well, Edison Research has produced its Podcast Consumer 2017 report, which provides more information from Edison's 2 large, long-running studies of US listening, the Infinite Dial and Share of Ear. Additional podcast listener findings are presented, including income, education and employment data. Podcast consumers are generally younger, well-off, educated and technology savvy. The balance of sex continues to lean slightly male, with 56% being male and 44% female. 31% of podcast listeners earn $100,000 a year or more, compared to 22% of non-listeners. 63% of podcast listeners are employed full-time, compared to 49% of the general population. Survey respondents who listened to a podcast in the last week reached 15%, and among those weekly listeners, the average time spent listening to podcasts was between 1 and 3 hours for 36% of them, and for 22%, the average time was between 3 and 5 hours. Weekly listeners are keeping up with an average of 5 podcasts in the last 7 days, and the average time spent for weekly podcast listeners is just over 5 hours in total. On listening habits, the report says, and I quote, "Most podcast consumers listen to most of the podcast episodes they download, and the vast majority listen to at least most of each episode." So what do all these stats mean? Well, let's caution that these statistics are from the US and may not represent the UK very well. My gut feeling is that the UK audience is slightly older. It's probably also smaller in percentage terms. It's a shame we don't have good listener figures for the UK. Hopefully that will be rectified before too much longer. For now, I'll say that podcasting continues to grow steadily and podcast fans really love their podcasts. News from Apple now. iTunes Podcasts is now Apple Podcasts. The rebranding includes new logos and badges for use on websites and a new Twitter handle, @Apple Podcasts. Apple suggests tagging Apple Podcasts on Twitter when talking about your shows, saying that they love to share great shows, special episodes, and to help listeners know what to listen to right now. I don't see anything sinister in the name change. Apple has been removing the I branding from products for quite a while now. Will it help podcast discovery? Probably not, but hopefully it provides a clearer platform for Apple to start promoting its podcast services more. Time will tell. Would you like to be on the radio? I talk a lot about online radio, but now a DAB radio station has launched in the UK that allows anyone to run their own show. Upload Radio is initially available in Gloucestershire, Wrexham, Chester, Liverpool and Surrey and South London, and can be listened to using a DAB radio receiver. It can also be listened to through the Radio Player app. The station's been set up by Matt Deegan. Now, he's a busy man. He runs the British Podcast Awards, co-runs the Next Radio Conference with James Cridland, as well as running his own media company and DAB multiplex network. To be a part of Upload Radio, all you need to do is to record 2 29-minute chunks of audio and 1 30-second promo. Once you upload the show to the website, you can then add a track listing and then pick an available time slot from the station's schedule. At the time of launch, it costs £20 for an hour. As well as the broadcast slot you pick, the station has a 30-day catch-up system. So once your programme has been broadcast on air, it's available on Radio Player on demand for a month after that. Now, the cool thing about this station is that you can include as much music as you like. You can also include advertising, as well as promoting other stations, platforms and events. The station is licensed for PRS and PPL in the UK, and your £20 fee includes all licensing costs. It is worth noting that the station is licensed by Ofcom, so you do need to be a bit careful to follow rules on things like swearing. Basically, don't do it. I think this is a fantastic idea as a station. It's something I definitely plan to try soon. What's attractive to me is the potential reach Upload Radio provides through DAB and Radio Player. Okay, so that's all from the Richard Daly podcast for this week. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend on Apple Podcasts. If you visit my website at richarddally.com, you will find all of my social media links, as well as the various ways you can subscribe to this show. Show notes for this episode are at richarddally.com/29. As usual, please send me your questions or comments, and if there is a topic you'd like me to cover, then you can tweet me. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.